Okay, so to truly learn our cage system, what we need to do is we need to make sure that we have a really great understanding of 5 essential major chords. Those chords would be C, A, G, E, and D. Okay, and those will be in your booklet. Okay, so when we think of the word caged, what's happening is caged is literally those 5 chords arranged in a particular order that's going to work across your fretboard. So let's just break down these chords, make sure we understand what we have going here. So our C chord is sitting right here. Okay, I've got my first finger on the 2nd string, 1st fret. I've got my middle finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret. And I've got my ring finger or 3rd finger on the 5th string, 3rd fret. And I'm strumming the bottom 5 strings. Okay? Now, I've got a little bit of distortion on my amp right now. And that's intentional in case there's something I want to do that has a little bit of zing in it. Okay, just so you know that. Okay, so I've got my C chord. I'm strumming the bottom 5 strings. Okay? If you play C a different way, for instance, if you play C like this, where this is technically called a C add 9. That's not going to work for what we're looking for here. So I want you to learn the traditional way of playing these chords like I'm showing you. And the goal is, if you've seen any of my other courses, I'm going to recap some of this a little bit, but please understand, the most important thing that you can learn is how to do something truly effective. It's not any good to you if you don't really understand it, or if you only halfway understand it, or that sort of thing. You need to be able to move to it. It needs to be fast, and it needs to be clean, and it needs to be accurate. So one of the things I always teach students about is learning how to bounce chords. So for instance, if you have a C chord here and you're not very good at it, or you have any of the chords that we're going to discuss in this course, and it's not comfortable to you, one thing you can practice is a practice technique called bouncing. And what you're going to do is you're going to pretend like your fingers are super glued together, and you're going to pick them up and hold the shape. The goal is to hold the shape, and then you set it back down. Okay? So the true practice of this is not the setting it down. That's just the response to see if everything actually worked out the way it was supposed to. The goal is, for instance, if my hand is sitting on my lap and I want to make a chord, any chord, my goal is to come up to the fretboard, and I've already made the shape before I ever get to the fretboard. I don't want to get there and then create the chord. Does that make sense? I want to come up, and I've already created the shape right here. I've got a C. I just need to set it down. And if I was going to move, for instance, to a D chord, when I lift my fingers up, I want to shift to that D shape and then move it down, set it down. Okay? That's called bouncing. So the 2 things you can do with bouncing is, number 1, you can bounce just a single chord over and over and over. And the other thing, of course, is you can bounce back and forth between chords. So a lot of people say, well, B minor, for instance, is a really hard chord for me to play. Well, if it is, then it requires you to spend some real quality time practicing bouncing it, picking it up, setting it down. And remember, the bouncing technique, it has nothing to do with how fast you do it. It's how well you do it. Because it's the amount of time you spend in the air. This is where the learning is happening, not when you set the chord down. Once you've set the chord down, you can forget about it and you can move on and, eat a cheeseburger, and it doesn't make any difference. The goal is to have it in the air. Learn how to train your fingers to make the C shape right here. So when I want to set it down, it goes down. So just some tips to think about. So there's your C chord. Our A chord is going to be 3 in a row on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings right here in the 2nd fret. Okay? This one you can strum the bottom 5. Okay? So that's an A chord. The D chord, doesn't matter what order we're in here. Here's the D chord. Okay? The D chord goes on the bottom 3 strings. My first finger is on the 3rd string, 2nd fret. My middle finger is on the 1st string, 2nd fret. And my ring finger is on the 2nd string, 3rd fret. Okay? And then we have 2 chords left. We have G, and G could either be a 3-finger G or a 4-finger G, depending on what you would prefer. Either one will be fine for the cage system that we're going to be learning. So with the G chord, I'm either playing 3 fingers by putting my ring finger down here on the 1st string, 3rd fret, putting my middle finger on the top on the 6th string, 3rd fret, and then putting my first finger on the 5th string, 2nd fret. Now that would be just fine. That's how you play it. If you play it with these 3 fingers, it doesn't matter. Whatever fingers you use is perfectly fine. Okay? The other way you can play a G is by putting these 2 on the bottom. You put your pinky on the 1st string, ring finger on the 2nd string, both on the 3rd fret, middle finger on the 6th string, 3rd fret, and then your 1st finger goes on the 5th string, 2nd fret. That's a 4-finger G. It still functions as a G chord. It's perfectly fine. Either one of those would be fine for you to use. Okay? So this G, D, A, and C so far. That's what we've got. Okay? I'm always going to call this the bottom and this the top. I know it's confusing sometimes because people refer to it as different things. So just so you kind of understand, for me, this means up because the pitch is getting higher. Okay? And of course, down is the other way. So when I'm playing a scale or something, as I do this, I call that moving up the scale because you're hearing the pitches move up. So I'll always preference that by showing you arrows with my fingers and that sort of thing so you always know what I'm talking about. Okay? So the last chord we have is an E chord. Okay? The E chord is done by placing your 1st finger on the 3rd string, 1st fret, putting your middle finger on the 5th string, 2nd fret, putting your 3rd or ring finger on the 4th string, 2nd fret, and you can strum all 6. Now, my hope is that you've done these chords many times before, because if you're learning the cage system, hopefully you've already developed these. But if for some reason you don't know them, or you need to work on a different fingering, or a different shape that I'm doing that you don't normally do, or something like that, again, they're going to be written in your book. You need to memorize these before you move on. So you practice visualization. First thing, you see it in your head. Okay? If you can't see it, you can't play it. So if you can think about it, like if your guitar isn't around and you think D, can you see it in your head? G, can you see it in your head? That sort of thing. First thing, visualization. Second thing, bouncing. Picking the fingers up, setting them down over and over and over. Okay? And the third thing is clarity. When you make the chord, you want to make sure that it's nice and clean. You want to make sure all the notes are working. You pick through, make sure all your notes are functioning. Strum the correct strings. On a D chord, you're just strumming the bottom 4. Don't strum the top 2. It just gets really noisy, that sort of thing. Okay? So that would be the setup for the initial 5 chords for our caged system. So practice that, and then let's move on.